So I think I've already created my grandiose notion, which has to do with the synchronicity, which is like if we start moving in certain ways and sharing meaning, then it could have an effect. So yeah, there's something about that. And I'm glad that I created that bit, even though it might not come into play. And now it's more like, well, what am I meant to do? What am I allowed to do? I really, like, do I still want to exist? Why am I still here? So many different things. And that's why I'm going to try to talk to myself. I think, at the very least, it is helpful for survival. I need to continue to survive. We're all trying to survive and maybe thrive. And I really don't know if I'm meant to thrive or if I will. And in another way, I've already actualized myself when I was in California. Like, I lived kind of a dream of being with someone, being happy, having a lot of physical contact and fun and sunshine and seeing Celine Dion. And then it just all drops out and I'm back at this whole feeling of I really don't have that many friends. And so this could be a way of, I need to befriend myself. I really do. And that's, I guess, what I'm going to attempt to do, is befriend myself again. And hopefully it would be nice if I could make something practical for somebody, like to help. I don't know if I will, because part of the trouble is I don't have a very good memory. So it doesn't really go in that sort of logical way. So I was thinking, I watched some videos by Vsauce. He's a really popular YouTuber who creates these really cool videos about science and different things that are interesting. And I was thinking, I watched a video by him that said that we would rather feel pain than be bored. And it was just showing this little experiment where a guy was in a room alone with this shocker thing, and he had already experienced the shock and knew that it hurt. And he had to sit alone for half an hour, and he shocked himself twice because he'd rather feel this pain than be bored. And they just showed this one example, so I don't know if that is absolutely true, but I was thinking, like, a lot of times when I watch stuff and my brain starts to get into the learning and wondering mode, it starts to extrapolate to my own life, and it was thinking that maybe if I'm not talking with myself, I could get bored, because the way that the manic mind works, with all these ideas and insights and perceptions and excitement and lots of thinking, and people generally like the sensation of that when they're in it, and crave that sensation when they fall out of it, it implies that that's a really exciting state and fun and interesting and enjoyable. So the opposite of that would be, a possible opposite would be boredom. So I was thinking, and I had been thinking before already too, is that, this movement of mania that's kind of strange and aberrant in terms of it doesn't happen to everybody, and it doesn't happen to the majority. I was wondering if, like, the human brain in general, gets bored with itself, or if it's bored with itself. And it could be true with how many people, like, end their lives. They don't see a point. So people in mania, it feels really meaningful and not boring. And one could wonder, well, why is that happening? Well, it could actually be the brain's desperate attempt to create some new structures of perception or language or interacting, communicating, connecting that aren't as boring as the ones that we have now, like, say, small talk, or only talking about what we did, which maybe was boring at the time that we did it, and then we talk about that. I generally don't feel bored, but listening to that and watching that gave me a bit of an insight into, the brain could be hedonically adapted to itself, meaning it's just kind of bored with all these games, and like bored even to find something that's not boring, because it's all within the same field of boringness. But I'm not saying things are boring, but for some reason, talking with myself doesn't seem boring. I don't know. And then the other thing that I extrapolate from the Vsauce videos that I watched was that he said, there's a quote by somebody that says, those who go the fastest travel alone, and those who go the furthest travel with others. And that was just at the end of some video of his. And that connected to a different video where he was showing this Bacchista-Crone curve, which was a curve that was like the fastest distance between 2 points. Is it like this? Is it a straight line? Is it a curve? Well, they used light to figure out, this guy who solved the problem, Bacchista-Crone, no, he used light and the fact that it always takes the fastest route through whatever medium to deduce this curve. And so when I heard light always takes the fastest route, then, I feel like when we're manic, we're lighter, and it's more like we're in this quantum light body that also is physical and material, but it's lighter, and we speed up, and sometimes we feel like we're already in the future, or I feel like we have access to some like future information sometimes, or maybe like a brain or a brain state that we might all have more access to in the future. So anyways, when he was showing this solution to the fastest distance between 2 points, being this curve, and then also hearing that those who go the fastest travel alone, I'm thinking, well, how do we go the slowest? Because the brain has a tendency to speed up in mania and bipolar. So I'm just thinking, like, how do I slow down? Like, how do I go slow? One way would be to maybe talk slower on purpose. One way would be to never write out another insight again, because it seems to speed up the brain. But then the trouble with that would be that one could get subject to being bored. So, because when we write and we write down this stuff that seems fresh and new to ourselves and maybe helpful to the world, you know, grandiose notions, you know, it's not boring. It kind of sucks that generally, if it's a big grandiose notion, we don't have the capacity to carry it out on our own. And that's why I wanted to create Synchronicity, to have maybe a certain structure of people that if there is a good idea, like with a certain skill set, if there is a good idea, then they can go with it. But like that doesn't really exist right now. Because that's the other thought, is that if one is around other people whose brains are generally more energized, then it could be that the one brain living, say, in a basement doesn't have to do these like ups and downs as much. And I don't know. And this isn't in terms of like better or worse. It's about finding a niche or a function that may at least give some kind of like meaning and purpose to the pain or the ups and downs, or what it is that it can produce, possibly. We don't even know. I shouldn't say that, because there are a lot of people out there that have this, that are functioning and have managed to make a good career and everything of it. And I haven't done that. And the other way I was thinking was to get a regular job and sort of forget about it all. And I might do that, like get something really menial, or I do like driving too. So there's something about these words, there's something about being in nature. Another thing would be to just go out and talk to myself in nature, talk to nature. And I've done these things with myself in the past, and so this might be a matter of talking myself back into the way I was living and seeing that it does have some meaning and effect to stay alive and do that. Yeah, I remember when I made the fly video, I watched it after and I was laughing, and then I laughed and then I fell out of it and I was in all this fear for a long time. So it's almost like if I try to celebrate or laugh and have fun, maybe it's because I was by myself, like celebrating by myself or laughing by myself. Maybe that's the problem. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so back to that curve thing. I feel that these change in brain states has something to do with relativity, has something to do with, yeah, they gave another example where this person's in mud in the Vsauce video, and there's a ball on the road. And so how far would they want, at what angle would they want to run in the mud and then onto the road to get to the ball the fastest? Because the longer they're in the mud, the slower they go. So there's actually like a way to do it. And so for me, running in the mud is the same as being in this sort of lower molasses state, like I've described. It's like being in molasses. And, I'm like literally I was like doing all this creative stuff and then all of a sudden like sit on the couch and just start crying like, whoa. And you know, that was happening when I was in California. I was like being creative, and then I'd fall out of it, and I'd be like, whoa. It's really painful and disruptive and like jarring to be pulled out of that state. So there's, you know, just don't bother to go in it. Try to avoid it. And then there's go into it and feel the pain. So with that mud example, it's a matter of two. Can I just like run in the mud longer? And then the ball just keeps rolling further and further ahead. But then eventually there's enough people, and then we can get on the road and run after the ball together. With these videos, these Vsauce videos, I was seeing that from his like super genius description of things that we probably wouldn't normally ponder anyway. I was seeing some ways to look at how I see this whole bipolar thing in terms of being in the mud, and instead of running down the road by oneself and grabbing the ball and people are still in the mud, then I'm playing with the ball by myself. But it's like, how do I stay in the mud? And I think I'm just naturally kind of doing it, you know. Could think of it in terms of, well, I just won't shower, then I'm pretty muddy. Gain weight is another way to stay in the mud, like muddy up the body, slow down. And these are the things that the psych meds do. They make us hungrier. And what I've noticed in being back from California is I'm on the same amount of meds, but I've been hungrier. And I think it's just like the relativity of the energy making me hungrier, or, you know, when we're more bored, we eat. And also, I wasn't taking the vitamins, and apparently taurine helps with weight loss. So it could have been that too. But it's okay that I gained some weight, because I lost a lot of weight. And I watched another Vsauce video, which was messages for the future, or from the future, or something. And he was talking about space probes sending messages into space. But at the end of the video, the last 10 minutes, he talks about something really interesting. He talks about the Library of Babel. And oddly enough, I have that paper somewhere. There's a paper on the Library of Babel by this guy. There's also a short story, but I had this paper. And so I remembered it. And it turns out this guy named Jonathan Blaziel or something, he created an online version of the Library of Babel, which is a sort of a virtual huge library of books, like massive, with every possible letter combination. So basically it says that anything that ever has been said or could be said would be in there, as well as the description of all of your possible deaths, of like everything is in there. And it's on a certain page in a certain book, and that's already there, like it's already on that certain page. They could never make this library, it would be too big. But somebody developed an algorithmic way to make it. And they say those pages are already written like the way that they created it. Because some people say, well, if you look it up, it just puts it on a page and then it makes it so it's on that page. But I read something where that's not possible because they wouldn't have the storage for that or something, like they wouldn't. So it's encoded in the algorithm, but that page doesn't exist, because if they make the page exist, then it's too much information for any computer or any server to handle or something. So it makes sense. And it's interesting because Vsauce says, just because it can be made in the library doesn't mean that it's been said. And he also said, we were born at just the right time to explore language, to explore what can be said, what should be said. And he said, what that can be said will you be the first to say? And this struck me because I feel that in my self-dialogue process that sometimes I say things that I've never said to myself or I've never thought of before, that have never entered my mind. And it's the process of speaking and having that open dialogical relationship with oneself and reality that will bring that next thing in to be said. And often when I'm in a good state, that's the way my brain works. There aren't things sort of pre-forming in mind, which are from the banks of knowledge. And a lot of time that makes it so I don't really say much of anything. I'm more of a listener, because there aren't like things pre-formed and like waiting for a space to say. So anyway, I just really like that. What that can be said will you be the first to say? So I was thinking of trying to find something that I said that seems more original and looking it up in the library. But the trouble is that the library online thing, libraryofbabel.info, doesn't seem to be working, at least for me. So I'll have to keep trying it to see, because what I was gonna do, well, I thought of a few things I could do with it, but I wrote up like a few long bits, and then I could actually put in a really long bit, because the character length of a page in this Library of Babel is 3,200 characters on a page. And so if I looked up a page of what I wrote that was 3,200 characters, it'd be interesting to see if that whole bit was there. And then it'd be interesting to like look up possible deaths or like things that I've sort of had like premonition or prophecy, and see if it's in there. And also some of the things that I've sort of gleaned through dialogue, where you sort of talk to nature and it tells you how it works and you don't have to rip it apart. Just seeing if that's in there. So I thought, oh, I could write a book and sort of reference this library. And then I also thought that perhaps we people with bipolar are sort of accessing this Library of Babel in order to babble. Or if it's sort of a similar process that we're just sort of babbling in order to babble out some new thoughts. And if people have racing thoughts and then they're talking too much, talking too much depends on who you're talking to. Somebody might be lonely and love to have somebody just babbling away. You could create that role for people in mania. If some people are lonely and actually just want to hear someone talk, you could pair people up and have someone listen. And we could also have listening telephone lines where someone's sort of that way and they need someone to listen unconditionally. Then do that. Or one can always do the whole, phone recording things, and people could make their manic babble podcasts or whatever. Because the thing I feel like is that people are curious about looking up things in this library. It could have been possible that if you take somebody in mania and like stuff that they're saying and you record it, you write it down or what have you, and then you check the library, it's in there, probably. And that would be kind of interesting to be like, well, it just puts some other kind of spin of possible relevance on it, to be like, hey, you just said something that is in this book, but nobody's ever said that before. We don't think like, oh, nobody's ever said that before. That's really interesting. We generally think, well, why are you saying that? You're talking too fast. And that's more like other people just being like, well, I want to talk about what happened yesterday. Or I don't know. I just wonder if there's a place for that, if there's a place for that energy to go, it could change the field such that when we go up, maybe when we fall back down, it's not so much. Maybe it wouldn't be as much if we weren't in such pain and then like yelling and screaming about ourselves and the past. If it was received in a different way, I don't know. So I don't know. I don't know if it matters. I think for me, it's about getting back to receiving myself in a different way, or in this way, and seeing that it at least keeps me alive, it keeps me occupied. I'm seeing it more like, okay, now I need to figure out how to occupy my time, because there's just been this sort of break in the fabric of my identity and things like that, and communication, being able to communicate with myself. Because even if I did, say, try to meet up with 5 different friends in the next week, I would be talking about me and my story and what's happened in the last couple months. And it's kind of like I was trying to go one way and now I'm back this way. So it's just like trying to make sense, trying to explain why I wasn't fully truthful about like where I was and what I was doing. And a lot of it's like this PTSD thing. I was trying to get back to doing okay before seeing people that I know and care about, because otherwise I would be relying on them to sort of funnel me to the system or like talk to me about that stuff, when perhaps I need to learn to enjoy people's company when I am with people. I just need to learn to appreciate life, learn to navigate this body pain, and maybe find a way to help and support others. Part of me is trying to support other people by staying alive, because it seems that people want me to be alive, and I need to go with that. The other thing with this Library of Babel is that each page is 3,200 characters, and it's 410 pages per book in this library. And I thought of writing like a Bipolar brainstorm Library of Babel, volume 1 or something, and just putting all these Babel bits in there, because for me, it's easier to babble on than it is to put together like, okay, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. I don't know what the chapters are. There's no steps. I don't even know any of that. Like, for me, I'm very visual, so what's sort of around me will prompt me what to do. So yeah, I might try and start doing some writing, but we'll see how that affects my brain. I might just continue to talk with myself. And another interesting thing is I came across a word that Vsauce shared. Apophenia is seeing connections or patterns in information. So basically, I feel like people with bipolar, we have hyperapophenia. And he said one type of apophenia is called pareidolia, and it's seeing or hearing of things that weren't meant to be there. Seeing faces that weren't purposefully placed there. Well, I have that a lot. So I think I have this like hyperpareidolia. So that gives a word to it. It's not just, hey, I see happy faces everywhere, but there is this pareidolia. Other ways to slow down. So I made these notes on Vsauce's video about the brachistochrone curve, and they mentioned keeping the journey short and picking up speed early. And that has nothing to do with anything. Like, I'm not quoting that to share what they were talking about in this brachistochrone video. What I'm trying to see are little clues for myself. And maybe I could save myself some trouble by taking Tom Wooten's Bipolar in Order course or something. The only thing with that is I don't want to feel like married to it. So keeping the journey short and picking up speed early gets the fastest down this curve. So for me, I would say not picking up speed early. So what is it that speeds me up? It would probably be vision. I could use these to cut down the input. They have these holes, so maybe that would slow me down if I wore these all the time. And also the orange ones change the amount of information. But other than that, I was thinking about just maybe walking around slower. So if when I'm in that creative flow and nobody's here and I'm kind of like moving around really quick hand-eye coordination, and then the energy changes and I'm just like, can't do much of anything. Perhaps moving around slower in general, getting more comfortable with moving really slowly. That could be something. So then if the energy changes, I'm moving slow anyway, and I'm kind of enjoying moving slow, whether it be walking to get coffee or make coffee or anything. So that is a possibility. And walking, say, slower in nature, one could maybe pick up more of the beauty and stop and take more pictures. So moving slowly, in realizing that I've moved fast and I feel like I experience myself as like in this energy where I completely actualize myself and everything's perfect and nothing needs to change. And then in this lower energy where I feel like I can barely move and I don't know what to do. So yeah, getting a job might help because it'll tell me what to do. It'll be something that tells me what to do. And another quote, they say, find the tautochrone the solution that brings you all together, even if you started in different places. So this is sort of what Synchronicity would be in a way, as a tautochrone, a solution that brings us all together, even if we're in different places. And another thing they talked about with that mud problem was basically the ratio of the speed in the mud to the speed on the pavement is equal to the sine theta 1 versus sine theta 2, blah, blah, blah. And it says the resulting path will be optimal, the optimal quickest route, according to Snell's law. So it says light always obeys Snell's law. When it leaves one medium where it travels more slowly like water and enters one where it moves more quickly like air, it always refracts according to Snell's law. In other words, light always follows the route that it is the fastest for it to take. So for us who are bipolar, I feel like we have this adjacent light body, this sort of light body, and maybe we need to learn how to go anti to Snell's law, to not always travel the route that is fastest to take. And this actual up and down thing could be a way of doing that. It could be a way to slow down, because if we just kept going in that so-called mania, like where would we end up? We'd probably end up living our dreams. And some people manage to get on that path early on. But yeah, so even if somebody does, it doesn't mean that it's going to be an easy road. Like, look at someone like Whitney Houston. So people are generally pretty lonely when they're living their dreams. So we need this sort of like anti-Snell's law, which I think kind of what it shows for me is that, you know, maybe we're light, but there's this sort of muddy world, and then there's this airy world where when we're in that airy world, we're fast, we're flowy. So we kind of know where we are based on how we're moving or who's around us. And so we can actually sense that by how fast our body is moving, and just slow down our movements, perhaps, including slowing down the movement of our mouth, like talking slower. And or we could just write it down, or I don't know. I feel the thing is that we wouldn't translate it into so many words of writing if it were translated into body movements, perhaps. Like showing rather than telling. So then for that, it could be a completely different life design. It could just be a matter of how we carry ourselves and hold ourselves. And that was the other thing I was wanting to get into. Yeah, like words are so fast, it can describe a future and put the brain in this imagined future state. And then the body is slower. So that was the other thing I was contemplating, is just trying to design my life where I'm really active outside, like badminton, golf, tennis, rollerblading, walking. A lot of these things require two people. So I was even thinking of just taking out a basket of things and and being in the body. So there's that too. So yeah, maybe the body is bored with sitting around, and the weather's going to get nice next week. So another quote I found Vsauce saying in the whole stimulation for pain versus boredom. And he says, any stimulation is better than boredom. You'll make friends with whatever you need to, like an object that is for zapping you. And yeah, so I guess I'm befriending my iPhone and see what happens. I don't know. So yeah, so there's this thing of slowing down movements. There's possibly writing. There's possibly stopping writing. There's these physical activities, possibly, and maybe the possibility of doing some videos that are more practical. But I don't know. I think just re-engaging with my voice is possibly enough. I really don't know. I don't know much of anything. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see what helps.